Hey everybody, this is Big Jonas coming at you. It is Saturday, May 26, 2018. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at Big Jonas. I am not a financial advisor. These are just my thoughts and opinions on crypto. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. And we're going to just take a look here at kind of a larger picture to start out this broadcast to kind of get a sense of, what this whole parabolic move and now this whole unwind is still doing here. And a lot of the, potential energy that was built up in this move, this amazing move, that brought us to almost 20,000 back at the end of last year, that kind of potential energy is slowly unwinding as we bounce around here in these corrections. So the drops that we had here to 10,000 was so close to this parabolic move that there was enough energy to bring us back up to 17,000. The drop here at 9,000 back in January 18th was enough to bring us back up to, almost 13,000. And then our bottoming we had here at about 6,000, was enough to bring us up 100% almost to almost, 11.7. And we had a little more bounce there and we were rejected. And then this basically created a little momentum to bring us from 6,500 all the way up to about 9,900. And now we're kind of going back in that same routine where we're losing power, but we're also beginning to kind of gain some sort of a potential energy that will allow us to bounce from this kind of wherever that may be. Now, let's try and figure out, we're talking about bounce areas in here, and we can talk about kind of why this recent move that we're seeing here kind of bounced, in the first place. Everything kind of had to do with this big green candle we had here back on April 12th that precipitated this nice move we had here. And we're almost giving most of that up. We can see we basically bottomed halfway down the candle, and right now we're kind of still in that body of the candle, holding right here a little support area here. You have to ask yourself, you look at this kind of support we've been in the past 3 days here. Are we consolidating here? Are we loading up, for this next kind of push higher? You can see what happens when we fall under a lot of these EMAs here, how they can act as resistance. When this one, the 55 on the 4 hour, was basically broken through, it acted as great support kind of all the way here, held there, broke, tried to hold it there, and basically was been rejected ever since, right here, ever since, so any kind of a bounce we do get, if there is one, that 55 on the 4 hour, which through this entire mini run, if you want to call it, I've seen be touched several times, especially with altcoins, as a good resistance and then support line you want to see achieve basically to hold over. So we can definitely draw some trend lines here. Here's our 6,000, here's our 6,500, and you see that if we're kind of basically touched there, there's a chance we're gonna retest this trend line support here at some point, um, logically thinking, So are we kind of get down here? Is there one more push here? Or when we do get down here at a really, 7,000 ish, let's just call it, plus or minus $100. If you're not kind of buy it at 7,100, but you are kind of buy it at 7,000 or 7,050, that's an example of where you should be scaling in if you do want to take a long position if we are able to touch this trend line here. This trend line held here, this trend line held here, and now we're just assuming it's going to bounce off here and do some sort of another, I don't know, kind of rainbow pattern, if you will, kind of up and down, similar to here, similar to what we had back when we bounced originally here. This was more kind of like a M top. This was more kind of like a rainbow kind of C. I don't know what you call this, but definitely had a little different characteristics, but kind of same when it found support on this trend line here. Now, hitting this trend line, for a third time, I don't know. I mean, yes, it could probably hold, and yes, there could probably be some sort of, um, kind of maybe even similar, kind of arcing bounce again, where it touches the line again for a fourth time, or this could be just that support that can start a new Elliott wave, impulse wave higher. It's very possible. Um, but just you have to ask yourself, what kind of market are we in right now? And the farther, away we get from this parabolic move that we had, the less energy we're consistently finding in these bounces here. Now, we've seen that as we do bounce every time, these bounces get shorter and lower and lower. And, you have to ask yourself as you see the volume down here, what is this telling you? So we had just that massive volume late in the year. We had kind of a low volume here, and then we had a little spike on our bottoming there. And now we're just kind of, there's a lot of volume there, but there's also a lot of liquidity. There's a lot of coins out there that seems to want to, I don't see a lot of people going super long over this entire string here, which basically tells me that there's still that feeling in the market that, we'll test much lower prices. So let's take a look at our indicators here on a 4 hour. Basically have the stock RSI basically topped off again. You see how we had these bottoming RSI moments here in the 4 hour where we were very oversold. We actually were able to bounce, very oversold. But look at here. Even though we did bounce here, on a price standpoint, what do we only bounce like $150, $200 here? So I don't like that at all. That actually shows that I feel like the RSI is kind of not taking a lot of the price momentum with it here. Now, maybe this is an example of, maybe RSI is strengthening while the price kind of consolidates here. Maybe that's a bullish tendency there. We are on our histogram here. We are kind of resetting, basically saying we're ready to go positive again. And the OBV is kind of just hanging in there. So obviously with, level price action, we're kind of seeing a leveling out of the OBV. Let's take a look at the daily chart. And this is kind of what's interesting to me here is you see on the daily and you see on the RSI when we have broken the 30 level, which puts us into that oversold area. What actually happens, we get that nice bounce and we hit it here and we got that nice bounce and we hit it here and we got that nice bounce, and now we're getting close to it. If we zoom in here, we kind of see that we are holding some sort of a little support here, here, and here. It's kind of interesting, so let's hold this, or we kind of ride this up here, find support and catapult higher. Or is there a chance when we break this, we're really kind of test that 30 area and maybe go even lower? I would suspect that we will probably break it, but if we are able to hold support here on the RSI, then another kind of run up would happen. The question you got to keep asking yourself, that's what I kind of keep asking myself, is this the area where you're expecting basically to go long? I mean, if you think it's kind of bottom out at 6,900 and you're not, scaling in from, 72, 73, 7,400, expecting it that if it does bottom at 6,800, that it's going to go to like, I don't know, test 8,000 again, maybe even 9,000 again. And these couple $100 here are price action you really shouldn't care about. But it's just this kind of hesitance I feel out there just because people aren't really trusting this volume. We see that 6,000, 6,500 area here, which we had hit back when we came up here. In our parabolic move, we kind of tested it again here and here. So that even lower point puts us here. And now we're talking about kind of this descending, triangle here where we have this very strong resistance levels up here, and we have this kind of flattening area here that we keep testing over and over again. And I mean, how many times are we coming to see support if we do get down here in this 6,000 range? Now, if we do get down here, what are we saying? Are we saying that we're going to see that nice support bounce, hold, and basically retest the top of this trend line? It's very possible. We've seen it happen many times where we kind of bounce around here. If we do test here, definitely seems like there's enough room to basically retest the top of this resistance line. If we follow just the kind of the arcs of these waves here, if it's a nice flow, maybe sometime around the end of June, we're able to get back up to 6,400. I don't know. Sorry, 8,400, but maybe earlier than that if we have kind of a nice spike area here. It took from, the beginning of April till kind of the end of May. It took 1 month to basically go from 67, to about 99. So this isn't going to happen overnight. These moves are going to take some time. But what could happen faster, I think, would be kind of a downward move here. And that's when we actually do get these lower prices here. And we just don't hold. There just isn't a lot of conviction that 7,000 is going to be your bottoming area. Now, I don't think it's going to fall through, these areas here too quickly. There's just, the lower the price gets, I don't think you're going to see that quick, 30, 40% drops like we had seen when we were correcting initially from our parabolic move. There just isn't that much liquidity and money flow, in Bitcoin right now. So any kind of big drops we're going to kind of see, it's not going to be, I don't think, that kind of cascading catastrophe unless that 6,500 area just can't hold. And then there is kind of that free fall that could potentially happen into the 5,000 area, but we're not even close to that because right now 7,000 has been very firm. We're not breaking it yet. Basically the bears don't have a reason to break it yet, and the bulls, or at least the bulls aren't yet ready to capitulate really under this $7,400 area, which we've been kind of bouncing around 75 right now for a couple days here. Now we see these three candles here. We're kind of trying to equilibrium out this, 3 days of really nasty red. Not surprising. We're kind of trying to catch our breath. You see on the daily when we pop through the lower Bollinger, we're now able to find the lower Bollinger as a nice support level there, which is good, which means that any kind of bounce, I'll be looking for this red line here, which is the middle Bollinger. Where is that? Around $8,300 there. So there's definitely precedent to see this beginning to slowly curve back up and begin to want to show that it wants to at least test this higher trend line here. But until we see some big buy volume, until we see some movement here, it's hard to say. Now, can you equate what's going on here, if we are able to bottom, to another one of these kind of arcing moves here like we had seen here? Can we look for another super green candle like we had back on April 12th? Now, there's a big difference kind of with what is now versus what was then. And I want to go to the longs and shorts, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So Bitcoin shorts back on April 12th they were at all-time high area. You see how high they were, and you see how quickly they all got liquidated. So that was an area there where there was basically a short squeeze setup where everybody expected the price of Bitcoin to really drop in a stabilizing area, and it actually shot up there, which caused that nice bullish move. But now you see how low the short contracts are, which basically means there's not a lot of money shorting this right now. It's kind of pretty neutral. And you're seeing with the longs something very similar, a kind of a slow and steady uptrend, but really has been losing a lot of its strength here. Boom, we kind of found some support here, and now, is it kind of go higher, or almost feels like it's still kind of just dragging lower? Right now it is finding support on the 55 EMA on the daily chart, but we're not in the same short and long contract situation on Bitcoin than we were back on April 12th when we had that nice little move there. So, I'm basically assuming we're going to hold here for a little bit longer and try and push higher. I don't see why there'd be a reason to really sell out yet until we see some firm rejections from either of these EMAs, which we might be hitting. Let's take a look at the hourly. You basically see what our next line here of resistance could be, about 75.60, and then maybe 77, and then maybe we can get up to 79. But we're just not seeing the volume yet. We're just not seeing the buy volume yet at all. Look at Litecoin, very similar. We're just stuck in these 120s area, teens, low teens. Again, is this a different zone from back here in early April when we kind of had that nice pop in line with what happened with the price action on Bitcoin? Are these similar areas here where we're just kind of bouncing around, consolidating, finding some support, nice little spike up? Are we here? Are we kind of dipped down again? Are we kind of find that little pop, which we saw here, that brought us to 137, but then we gave it almost all back, and we basically got all the way back down to 112, where we consolidated a little more. So it just feels like, the sideways consolidation probably is the name of the game. Now, we are putting in a little more of a, I don't know, like you could obviously call this potentially a symmetric triangle. Others might call it a bear flag. Let me just kind of hide the volume there just to make this a little more clearer. And let's make this coloring a little better and a little thicker. How about that? There we go. So yeah, so that's that there and that there. So we are kind of putting in this flag. I guess you could definitely call it as not a bear flag, a bear pennant, excuse me, where we have this kind of, maybe it's breaking out of that one there, maybe it's not. Maybe if you want to go a little higher here and draw it this way. Yeah, I think that right there, that pretty much sums up what this is looking like here. Now, we have seen these break bullish. It is definitely possible, but just the angle of this and the way it's setting up, we've seen this play out a bunch of times where it kind of does this, bear pennant setup, and then it just doesn't hold, and it just goes ooh, and it's going to find kind of that big drop there. Now that drop is only going to happen, if Bitcoin does its thing and drops as well. Now, I've been trying to keep an eye if there's any like bearish divergence or anything, or bullish divergence. Is Litecoin holding up better than Bitcoin or vice versa? And right now I'm seeing nothing. I'm seeing it's like lockstep. If Bitcoin rises a little bit, Litecoin's going to rise a little bit as well. Here's the scary thing, though. We've been down this road before. We've been tested the low hundreds several times. If we test this low hundreds again, I mean, this is a little scary point here, especially if we are able to break 109. We could really be testing that $100 area there, which would hold firm on a couple attempts, I feel, to kind of break it. But man, if we break 100 and we start seeing $99, which could, coincide with a Bitcoin price definitely in the low sixes potentially, maybe even the high fives. I mean, that could be a really interesting area. Depends how we get there. It depends how Bitcoin gets there. If Bitcoin, kind of slowly keeps trickling down, losing steam, drops a few $100, raises $100, keeps doing that, then this will be kind of a slow bleed. But if we have kind of that cascading dumping, which, we might need to get a nice bounce off that just to get super oversold from an indicator standpoint, bring the price down so it can pop back up. We might need something like that to get a better bounce. Otherwise, a slow bleed I don't think would be very good for the market, because that would basically show that no one's really prepared to buy in any area until it needs to kind of find a longer term consolidation. Now, we might see something like this again where we're consolidating here for the next couple of days. Maybe it'll be a news event or some sort of FUD that will kind of push us in either direction. Let's look at Ethereum. It's been a little more bullish, obviously, than Bitcoin is this whole run. Kind of a very similar pattern here, although the first thing I'm seeing here that kind of just pops out to my mind is kind of a similar, God, I don't know what you would want to call this, some sort of a pennant, bearish pennant, similar, kind of still forming here, similar to Litecoin. This one's a little more, it had a larger drop percentage-wise when it went down to almost, 545 area there. So this is kind of setting up very similar. Now, these can break positive for sure. You break out here, and we're very close, it seems like, to wanting to do something. Maybe we're not as close as I thought. Maybe you can actually do this and make this a little bit wider and give you some more time here, basically a couple more days to kind of let the weekend play out. And look at Bitcoin Cash. similarly, this was the biggest high flyer, in last month's run. But similarly, we're putting on something kind of similar. Um, this almost looks like a bear flag more than a pennant, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, that's even bear flaggish. So this is actually, I feel, a little more bearish on a break potential just because it had so much room. A lot of this run here from 418, to 421, no pullback to consolidate here. So it could kind of fall through this if it's unable to hold like right here in that $1,000 price range, that kind of psychological $1,000 price range. One last thing I want to take a look at is the Bitcoin weekly. We have 2 days left, basically, to finish the week out. And I want to see kind of what kind of a candle we're putting in here for the weekly. Now, obviously, this was going to be a pretty nasty candle. We started at 8,600 and we went as low as 7,300, and we're kind of hovering close to the bottom of that. Obviously, in the next 2 days, the more the bulls can push this higher and increase the length of our lower wick here, the more helpful the next week's candle setup can become. There's a lot of talk about equilibrium when we kind of go a little too oversold, a little too overbought, a little too oversold, a little too overbought, a little too oversold. You're expecting that kind of curve around to that overbought area again, on a short-term basis. We haven't seen it touch the 55 yet. This zone here, in the mid 6,500, that is clearly an area you want to hold. And I do like that the Bollingers are actually getting a little tighter, a little tighter. You see how wide they are. And the weekly, you see how crazy over the weekly Bollinger, upper Bollinger, the price was here back when we topped out in the end of December. So obviously you can see what way overbought looks like. And now we're still kind of in that zone there where we're pulling the up Bollinger lower, we're pulling the lower Bollinger higher, and the tighter they get, that will basically induce that next, kind of price action move. Fortunately, right now, because of the height of the upper Bollinger, it still shows you could have more downward momentum to go. You have a kind of bearish RSI, stock RSI still. The actual RSI on the weekly shows how, topped off we were for so long, and now we're kind of still heading down. This basically shows that the weekly RSI still could fall significantly, a longer way to go. We are seeing a slight bullish uptick, though, in the histogram, as we were super oversold and we're slowly trying to pull our way back up, but that rate is slowing still. So, the bulls really need to step up in the next 48 hours to make this a better looking candle. If not, we could start into next week, kind of in this continuation zone here. Now, we have seen several times where we've had kind of a red light followed by a green light of equal size. We have this bearish back here candle engulfing almost a shadow, and then the next week, boom, we had a bullish, fully engulfing candle there. So there is precedent for a big red candle to be followed by a big green candle. But let's make this candle look a little better, and for that to happen, we just need to find that volume to come back in. So that's kind of an update on the big coins there. I'm not really seeing anything crazy, especially in the longs and the shorts, except I'm seeing a little more bullish intentions just because we're kind of holding this area here with a minimal amount of price action and price volume. Alts are finding some stability, but overall here, it's just hard to say kind of where we're going right now in this kind of low volume environment. Quick look here at CoinMarketCap. There are 1,624 current cryptocurrencies on the markets, 11,000 markets to trade them on. Market cap is $336 billion. It's down over $100 billion from where we are just a few weeks ago. Bitcoin dominance has increased to 38.2. I think it was as low as 35 a few weeks ago as well. But look how low our volume is here. We're under 5 billion, and with a decent amount of the day left, we're under 45 billion here, under that there. So we're in this lower volume area. Now, we had seen we had seen back in the end of April, end of March, where we had volumes in the 5 billion, the 4 billion, the 4 billion, and then April 6th we had 3 billion, 3 billion, 3 billion, and then we a little higher, a little higher. So we had this week of we were a super low volume, and then boom, there was our candle on April 12th where we basically doubled our volume, and then we were off to the races after that. And then over the next month, and in the end of May, we had a lot of high volume days here. Fortunately, a lot of these high volume days were people taking profits. Smart money was kind of getting out towards the top of the 9,700 range. So that was kind of interesting. And now we're back to this low volume environment here. So keep an eye on the volume. Definitely, if we're going to get some action, you're going to see the volatility increase either on the up or the down. That'll be definitely something to get a sense of, a market sentiment change. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Big Chonas. I'm also on YouTube at Big Chonas, and we'll be getting into some TradeView charts on TradeView as well in the near future. Hope everyone has a great Saturday, a great weekend, and we will talk to everybody soon. Stay touched. Be safe out there. We'll see you later.